Superpowers aren't everything. Here are superheroes who got stronger without powers. Thor's arc where he lost his hammer might have been the best thing that ever happened to him. Big statement, I know, but it led to the god becoming more secure in himself than he ever was, ultimately leading to him becoming even more powerful at the end of the day. Thor had harbored a secret belief that Gore the God Butcher was right, that the gods deserved to go because they were selfish and didn't care about mortals. But since he didn't let himself focus on that belief, it was more like a pesky back cupboard thought, it didn't really affect him or his ability to hold his hammer. Well, it didn't affect him until somebody else said it. Nick Fury learned from the Watcher that Thor held this quiet belief and whispered the confirmation to Thor, leading to the start of a pretty epic hero's journey of self-discovery and learning to love and trust yourself. Jane Foster took Thor's place, kind of until, Thor had sorted himself out again and believed he was worthy enough to hold the hammer. Eventually, in War of the Realms 6, Thor realizes that the hammer doesn't make the Thor makes the hammer, and he's back in action. Scott Summers temporarily lost his optic blast, but it taught him, and us, a lot about the kind of man he is. Despite losing his main mutant power in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3, Issue 14, Scott Summers barely let it affect him and proved he is still not someone to be trifled with, optic blasts or not. He continued being the team's fearless leader, creating effective combat strategies, and even almost sacrificing himself to give the team a chance at winning. He was captured and tortured and never gave in to the enemy's whims. Eventually, in issue 23, Scott's powers are reactivated, but by that point it had been thoroughly established that Scott is as powerful and respected, powered up or powerless. Zatanna's greatest strength is also kind of her greatest weakness. If you're the best of the best, there has to be something that brings you back down to earth. That's kind of the rule, it seems. And in Zatanna's case, she is one of the most powerful magic wielders alive, but she has to speak her spells so they're as focused as possible. So if you tape her mouth shut, or in the violent mind of the Joker, shoot her neck, it's all over. She has to rely on herself to win the fight. Luckily though, she, like many others on this list, has trained for that. She honed her combat skills with her father and the JLA. Of course, Zatanna did in fact lose her magic once. In Seven Soldiers, Zatanna, a spell gone wrong caused her to lose confidence and with that her magical abilities. After training her own apprentice, she was able to gain both of those things back. Batman never really had any superpowers except, a strong body and money in the bank, but he did lose both of those things after the incident where Bane broke his back. Right now, just so we're all on the same page, I'm personally thinking of the Dark Knight trilogy, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. Bruce was literally stripped of everything that made him who he was. He lost his strength, his sanity, his city, his good name. He pretty much was nothing in that moment. Having your spine snapped in half does an equal amount of damage to your mind as it does the body, but he came back after that experience stronger than ever. He overcame his self-inflicted mental blocks in that epic cave climbing scene, and that is a confidence that you can't shake. Despite losing the power of the Iron Fist, Daniel Rand just doesn't stop. Once possessing mystical, spiritual energy, Daniel Rand was practically unstoppable. His natural strength, speed, reflexes, and more, they were all enhanced by this. Plus, he became really good at just adapting to any environment he found himself fighting in. Hyper aware of his surroundings, he can hear everything and sense before an enemy strikes. He was also able to connect his consciousness to another person and focus his energy into healing at a rapid pace. As a man, he is a master martial artist and acrobat. In order to win a fight, Daniel did give up his powers once, but then he just happened to not be able to get them back, and this was a big adjustment for him, but he took it in stride, and when the new Iron Fist came along, Daniel ended up training them. Rand also helped Luke Cage defeat some Spider Slayers, and then helped Shang-Chi take on a fleet of tanks in the grand final battle. What a guy. Superman is known for being the strongest pillar of hope out there, and yet a certain rock just seems to hold an annoying amount of power over him. At first, when kryptonite was rare, Superman could kind of get away with not training for crypto incapacitation, but now it seems like everyone and their dog has access to it, so Superman definitely needed to start training for when his superpowers inevitably get stripped from him mid-fight. Thankfully, he is best friends with Batman, one of the greatest non-superpowered fighters out there, and also Wonder Woman, who is also just as good without power as she is with it. Superman put in the work so that he can at least hold his own and effectively take down enemies, even famously training with Muhammad Ali. Black Cat was gifted with the unfortunate, or fortunate, depends who you ask, power of bad luck. Not for her, but for anyone around around her. This power can help in her favor. Her enemies have an invisible force working against them, like 2 against 1. However, if she wants to get close to anyone and strengthen her personal life, too bad. Maybe people won't correlate their sudden inescapable bad luck with her directly, but subconsciously I'd like to think that you'd realize and end up distancing yourself, which does happen often with her. Felicia Hardy lost her powers in Peter Parker The Spectacular Spider-Man 115. She had, of course, Hex Spider-Man with bad luck to the point where he had to go get Doctor Strange's help to get it removed. Peter was just trying to get his bad luck removed, but Strange was concerned that the removal would affect the source. At this point, Black Cat and Spider-Man were really going through it, so Peter didn't really care about that. Of course, Strange's spell did affect the source. Peter ended up fine, but Black Cat, who was in the middle of a fight, got a bit of a shock when she was suddenly more evenly matched. The thing is, she was only thrown off for a second before she realized that she didn't need to pull her punches anymore. She defeated a handful of guys and then continued as Black Cat. It turns out her depowerment gave her other cat powers, like seeing in the dark, among other things, which she would have never discovered without depowering first. Wonder Woman is up next because she is that girl. With or without powers, I would rather go into a permanent coma than face off against Wonder Woman, and I think many other people would agree with me. Wonder Woman has been divinely empowered, so she is extra strong and can fly and more, right? But that's just the start. All her skills like martial arts and combat training and weaponry, she developed those. She trained to be the best there is. So sure, you can take away her God-given powers, but you're still left with someone who could throw you clear across the room. Back in the late 60s, so this is like Earth 1 Diana Prince, she did actually give up her powers. The Amazons had to leave Earth because they exhausted their magic and they had to go renew it. But Diana wanted to stay on Earth with Steve Trevor, so she willingly gave up her powers. Crime stops for no one, and soon she is needed to defeat Dr. Cyber amongst a series of other villains. She trains with talented martial artist I Ching, and together the two take down some of Cyber's henchmen and a bunch of other people. She lost her powers in Wonder Woman 179, and I'm pretty sure she didn't get them back until issue 204, which is quite a long time. New Earth Supergirl does not come to play and has trained for the day someone strips her of her powers, as shown in Supergirl, who is Superwoman. Supergirl is fighting Reactron and is doing well, but mid-battle he opens up a part of his suit containing gold kryptonite. Gold kryptonite halts her from accessing her superpowers for at least 15 seconds, which isn't great, but luckily she prepared for this moment. To Reactron's shock and surprise, Supergirl isn't as defenseless as he'd hoped. She actually smacks him around with a metal pole. Obviously, he's confused, and so Supergirl explains with the iconic line, "I trained with Batman with the Amazons. Just because I can't use heat vision doesn't mean I'm helpless." Love her for that. Too many times we've seen some crypto incapacitate our supers, and it's just a little nice change. Spider-Man lost his famous spider sense in Amazing Spider-Man 654, and it actually affected him in wildly unexpected ways. Things that Peter never even thought the spider sense would affect, he learned the hard way that it did. Like when he shoots webs. Normally Peter can swing around town, no problem, he knows exactly where to web to get a good grip, but it turns out that Peter's intellect isn't the reason for perfect placement, it was because of his spidey sense. A couple issues after losing the sense, Peter literally falls from the sky, which does shake him a bit mentally. This is the kind of power Peter didn't even realize he falls back on, so when he is fighting Master, Peter ends up psyching himself out mid-battle, wondering if he's always been so good at what he does because he is good, or because his spider sense has always had his back. How good is he really without it? It's only a moment's hesitation, but it's enough to get him shot. Overall, it's a really interesting look at Spider-Man that forces Peter to strengthen his other abilities. Spider-Man and Peter had to adjust to the change. He also gets a really cool new suit, so you can't complain there. Eventually, the spider sense returns, but it was cool seeing Peter adjust. But what do you think? Let us know. Bye!